Hello YouTube! It's been 2 weeks, I apologize for not having a video last time. But yeah, time catches up with you when you're living a hybrid lifestyle. Doing a bit of farming and still working in the office. It's very unfortunate. I don't enjoy it. My favorite place, right in front of the fire. There really is something very cavemanish about it. For those of you who've been watching, you know one thing about me, and that is that I really do enjoy a good, can you remember what it's called? An African barbecue is a braai. So, some green philosophy. There is something in every green person that you don't find in other people. It's kind of hard to pinpoint, and by no means do I have the answer for all of this, but there certainly seems to be a sense of that the way that the world runs and most people seem to live their lives, there's something fundamentally wrong about it. It's because it seems false, it seems fake, number one, and number two, it seems, well, we know that this word has been hijacked, unfortunately, but I have to use it here because it's a very good word. It's unsustainable. It can't go on forever. We have a finite planet. The only way in which our lifestyle can continue well into the future is if we get off the planet en masse, if we're able to colonize space stations, the moon, Mars. Those seem to be the nearest options. And then further expansion can continue, as it did when the Europeans first spread their empires into the rest of the world. For some, the concept of space conquest and colonization into space is very exciting. But ultimately, it's delaying the inevitable, because there will be a saturation point reached there as well. And then there'll be green people in space going, yeah, well, you know, this kind of thing on Mars. Ah, that'll be interesting, won't it? It is June in 2020, which means that we're in the middle of the global pandemic. And I had a sudden sort of realization of how this kind of fits in with the green aspect of my life and my thinking, and I think others as well. Those who think that this really big picture is beyond green. It's just a complete change of mindset altogether in order for the survival of the human race for eternity. What socialists are particularly concerned about is how all of this could have been avoided in a global socialist environment, political environment. And I thought, well, you know, there's so many debates and it's very complicated, and a lot of people really just don't. I was like, just leave capitalism alone, it works, etc. What else is there? How can we change, etc.? This is all we know. This is the recipe that we were given. It's all we know. Essentially, socialism prepares all of the people, the entire country, for exactly these kind of disasters. Capitalism has extended into every single aspect, into medicine, the soup kitchen industry, every single possible area of public works, which means that their reason for being is not as a public service exclusively, running on tax money, but it's there to actually be run as a business. And this is when cuts get made. I was watching something the other day on the British NHS, the National Health Service, and how it seems to be a public health service, which has run very successfully for many years, but has now entered recently a more of a sort of private, there's a lot of subcontracting happening, etc. And problems similar to what they're experiencing, have experienced all along in the United States, are starting to crop up now in Britain. A global socialist political system. A lot of people are saying, and I do agree with them, that we probably wouldn't have had the pandemic as bad as this. The reason is the following. I'm an architect, and in buildings you have to have a fire escape. You have to have fire hose reels at every floor. You have to have fire extinguishers, and these have to be maintained properly, and people need to be trained as well. Fire signage has to be correct, etc., etc. Now, many buildings go through their entire life, so this is an expense that has to be built in at the beginning of the project. It is a cost for an eventuality that is so tiny that it is almost non-existent, and many buildings go through their entire life, 100 years or so, get demolished, and those stairs have possibly never been used. Another example is lifeboats on a ship. A massive ocean liner is built, and at a really large cost, lifeboats are attached with their mechanisms to the ocean liner. There's really small chance that the ship could actually start taking water and that people would need to use the lifeboats. But it is built in. It is a built-in, designed-in feature that may never ever be used in the entire lifetime of the ship. Now, these are two examples where a capitalist, a businessman, a really aggressive capitalist, because yes, sure, there are very nice capitalists as well who, after making some money and not as milking as much profit as they possibly can get from something, but they might see something like the lifeboats on an ocean liner or the fire stairs and fire hose reels in a building as an unnecessary expense because the chance is so low, and insist that it gets taken out of the design at the beginning, hence making a saving, more profit. And this seems to be what's happened in capitalist countries around the world. When this pandemic arose, and the United States is probably the best example of this, countries were really unprepared. They didn't have lifeboats, they didn't have fire escape stairs, so they had to basically shut everything down to prepare themselves. And this has taken its toll and will take even more of its toll, because the system is just so fragile. It can't deal with a couple of months taken out where people are not earning. It's really sad. So from what I know about the socialist countries, socialist democracies, which are the Scandinavian countries of Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland and Norway, have fared a lot better. They did have some lifeboats. I'm not saying that they were perfect. Our country here, South Africa, I think is still going to go through hell, and we're going to go through a lot. It's just the system is incredibly fragile. A large part of the whole green concept is not just being environmentally friendly, but also being friendly to others. So the old concept of altruism, which is caring for other people, which used to be not an option in a tribal, in a village environment. You had to actually care for other people because they cared for you. That's how you survived. Right-wing people and strong capitalists dislike this intensely because they see people as inherently lazy, that poor people are there for their own reason because they haven't pulled up their socks, so they don't want to pay for their well-being. In a social democracy, this is a different story. Everyone is a member of that family. So in Sweden, for example, it's the Swedish family. There might be 8 million of them, but it's the Swedish family, and they look after each other. And so to finish off, before I have my delicious supper, right out here in the open, in midwinter in Africa, for countries that look after everybody, everybody, from poor to rich. Doesn't matter who you are, if you're a citizen of that country. If you've got a facility that you can go to, that you can get essentially a lifeboat you can get into, or a staircase from a burning building, you're going to be much better off. And not a hastily put together lifeboat either. A lifeboat that's always there, always checked. That's the fundamental difference. See you next week.